this year we've seen that with the purchases of ETFs already, and also US Treasury companies buying Bitcoin, those two numbers combined is 5.6 times the new supply of Bitcoin coming into the markets. And so this 401k news is going to really add fuel to this already big blaze of a fire, in terms of Bitcoin demand.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Bitwise Asset Management European head Bradley Duke. Bradley, very good to speak with you. We've got Bitcoin hovering near its all-time high, so just below $120,000 this morning. And of course, we had news that the Securities and Exchange Commission gave that Project Crypto speech, allowing crypto ETFs into 401ks.
Right. Well, so there's a lot of good news continues to flow out of Washington. As we've discussed before, the previous administration, under the previous administration, the SEC and previous SEC chair was very bearish on crypto, and there was actually a real policy to slow down and to hinder the progress and the growth of crypto in the US. Now this is really, the pendulum has swung completely in the other direction, where you have Atkins, the SEC chair, making a speech about Project Crypto, where he's actually identifying crypto as a strategic and important change that's happening in financial services, and how the SEC is looking at that and actually wants to progress and advance that wherever possible, with a really long-term plan. And I think anybody who's involved in crypto was extremely excited by that speech, where it just became apparent how the SEC is viewing crypto and how important they view it, and they want to position America, the US, as being as dominant in this nascent asset class. And as you mentioned, 401k inclusion is a huge thing. In the US, there's about in sort of defined contribution pension assets is about 12.2 trillion. Of that, is most of it is actually at 401k. I think it's around 8.7 trillion. And now if you can put crypto ETPs, ETFs into these pensions, tax sheltered pension plans, and continue to on them on a regular basis every month, which is huge, and will add to the already enormous buying pressure on Bitcoin. This year we've seen that with the purchases of ETFs already, and also US Treasury companies buying Bitcoin, those two numbers combined is 5.6 times the new supply of Bitcoin coming into the markets. And so this 401k news is going to really add fuel to this already big blaze of a fire, in terms of Bitcoin demand.
If you look at the Bitcoin price, can you draw any correlation with global money supply expansion, particularly M2 expansion?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually a chart that we follow, and it's there is a strong correlation. Now you have to in this chart, the correlation is there, but with a 90-day lag. So there's like a 3-month lag between the money supply growth and then the response to the price of Bitcoin, and that's just because it just takes time for the supply to actually reach and to filter through global financial services and money systems. And but we've seen that there's a really strong correlation when you overlay those charts. It's incredibly close. In fact, the correlation is really strong. And what it looks like, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but what it looks like is with this expansion of global M2, that it's likely going to mean a continued upward pressure on the price of Bitcoin. And we've seen Fed funds futures pricing in, like, there's an 80% chance of a rate cut coming in September. That too adds more fuel to this whole story as well, because you've got you've got a rate cut is definitely will ultimately lead to to an expansion in the money supply even further in the US.
Looking beyond Bitcoin, and we have Ethereum also not far away from those all-time highs that it hit back
Yeah.
in November 2021. What's driving Ethereum, Bradley?
So Ethereum is an amazing story, and I always say to people, like, look, you've got to look at each cryptocurrency individually and separately, and especially on the biggest ones. So of course, Bitcoin is the largest, and then Ethereum is the second largest, and for good reason. So Ethereum is a big platform. It's been kind of a lot of people last year kind of unfairly were saying, "Oh, Ethereum's dead," and they were certainly explaining why they thought that. But really quietly, Ethereum has been getting on with what they do. And let's not forget now that part of the change that we're seeing in the US has now through the Houses of Congress and the Senate, they've actually enacted laws, including the Genius Act, which puts a sort of defines the role of the stable coin, within the context of the U.S. Financial systems, and really, and stable coins are growing all the time. The fact of the matter is that a huge chunk, or most of those stable coins, are actually being produced using the Ethereum blockchain. Okay, so you've got that. There's on three levels. So you've got the stable coins being produced and run on on a few different blockchains, but Ethereum being the dominant one. Then you've got tokenization of real world assets. So what's happening is the more assets are going on chain, more assets are being invested into crypto. There's this increased demand for tokenization. So to take real world assets, including traditional finance assets like the S&P 500 or the Mag 7, people want to invest in that through tokenization. And Ethereum blockchain is the dominant player in tokenization. Of course, there are others, Solana and the other blockchains which are doing a good business in the tokenization space as well. But Ethereum dominates. And then again, in DeFi, which is decentralized finance, which is a growing area in the crypto world. The majority of that activity is happening on the Ethereum, these smart contracts and everything else happening on the Ethereum blockchain. So it's a kind of a triple whammy, and this is behind why there's been such a push behind the price of Ethereum to date, and it's starting to edge towards those all-time highs.
Bradley, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Bradley Duke is European head at Bitwise Asset Management.